manufacturing company from the Northwest, John Fluke, has had exceptional success in Japan. Their sales manager for international business explained that success. He said, basically, we gave the Japanese all the features they want, and then we used Japanese language-trained salespersons who sold the product benefits. He added, these sound like obvious things to do, but you'd be surprised at just how infrequently American companies pay attention to these factors. Yes, I am surprised, but then I've been surprised for a long time at how often we fail to listen, provide good service, and do obvious things at home as well. Cultural differences. One could go on endlessly about those differences, but they are the stumbling blocks, and they're the stumbling blocks uniquely, again, because unfortunately of our insensitivity to cultural differences. Time and again, foreigners with whom we do business comment that Americans pay too much attention to the tangible and not enough to the intangible. Americans depend on factual, logical argument and pay no attention to the intuitive or to the emotional side of things. The context of the relationship is of secondary importance to the American and of primary importance to many others, especially those such as the Japanese. When we discussed customer service earlier, I quoted IBM's former marketing vice president, Buck Rogers. And Rogers' point that prospecting for new customers is one thing, but maintaining the customer list is really where it's at. That is, to succeed in business, whether it's real estate or computer selling or banking, the relationship is everything. That's true, it turns out, in the United States. It's uniquely true when one is developing a foreign customer list or foreign customer relationships with distributors, suppliers, and the like. You look at the tales of woe, the tales of things gone wrong in overseas dealings, and the same words come up over and over and over again. Reading, talking with people recently, these are the kinds of things I hear time and time again. Quote, the relationship is key, unquote. Quote, the relationship is everything, unquote. Quote, continuity of management is absolutely essential, unquote. Quote, delicate and continuing stroking is required, unquote. Quote, there must be enough time devoted to direct personal contact, unquote. Quote, you can't be hit and run with your relationship. Catching the plane home on Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock from Tokyo is not the point, unquote. Quote, extended contact is required, unquote. Quote, contact at multiple levels is required, unquote. Quote, you must be patient, unquote. Quote, selling yourself is more important than selling the product, unquote. On and on this list could go, and it all talks to the same thing, the patient, meticulous development of relationships, often the antithesis of the brusque Western and especially brusque American style of doing business. It took ARCO 3.5 years to negotiate a tiny offshore drilling contract with China. It took Rome, the Silicon Valley telecommunications equipment maker, 20 visits over a multi-year period to land its first tiny order with the Japanese. Coca-Cola in Japan took 10 years of investment and development of business before it turned its first profit. Patience, patience, patience. A friend runs a small forest products company in British Columbia, small and not well known. He now has a very vital Japanese business. It took him 7 years to develop it. To listen to him tell the story, What's remarkable is only that he hung in there so long. He went, he visited, and nothing happened. He went, he visited, and nothing happened again. And on the story went. But he built the relationships. And eventually, one major company's forest product supplier didn't come through. And they gave the little company from British Columbia a chance to perform. And perform he did. And now, in the last 3 years, his business over there has increased by a factor of 25. But most people, sad to say, would have dropped out years and years ago and not made the patient investment. Stories by the bucketful have been collected about marketing disasters. Some of the ones that I've come across include Kellogg's introduction of the Pop-Tart into the United Kingdom. A total disaster. Why? Not many toasters in the United Kingdom. Simmons, the mattress people, had an awful time in Japan. Why? Japanese don't sleep on mattresses. They sleep on futons. Pan Am insulted the Japanese. They showed a reclining woman in an advertisement. According to the Japanese litany, the only women who recline are prostitutes. Singer, the sewing machine people, disastrous market introduction into the Arab countries. Why? They didn't understand. Women don't buy sewing machines in the Arab countries. The husbands buy the sewing machines so that the woman will do the sewing for them. The entire appeal of the product and design of the product had to be changed to, in fact, fit an entirely different buying pattern. Some have obviously learned. I mentioned Pizza Hut before. Campbell Soup. In Brazil, they put in only a starter part of the product so that people can add their own personal touch. The Japanese walk to the marketplace. They don't like heavy cans, and therefore Campbell Soup in Japan doesn't come in cans. The Irish and the Italians like their tomato soup creamy. The Germans like it with wine. The Colombians like it with spice. Ore-Ida, the Idaho-based potato people, found out that they shouldn't put salt in their French fries sold to Japan because the Japanese like to do their own salting. They don't like it to come with the package. McDonald's. In Germany, McDonald's franchises serve beer. In France and Spain, they serve wine. In the United Kingdom, they serve tea. And on it goes. Time and again, the success story is always matched by tailoring of the product, developing the product, in fact, patiently offshore. Well, let's turn to the specific topic of Japan, because Japan is on our mind so much. First of all, there is good news even here. We do $25 billion worth of business with the Japanese, $25 billion in exports. Years ago, a lot of that was agricultural. Today, less than 25% of it is agricultural. And in the high technology areas, where in theory we can't trade at all, we now have well over $6 billion in exports to Japan, up over 50% in just the last 3 years alone. The Commerce Department, who certainly does everything in the world to protect American exporters, that's their role in life, spoke some very unconventional wisdom, at least according to what you hear from the protectionists. The Commerce Department recently said, on balance, entry into Japanese markets is not significantly more difficult than entry into other industrially advanced national markets. Yes, there are extraordinary success stories of Americans in Japan. Coke, 60% of the soft drink market. As I said, 10 years before they turned a profit, and with the exception of the classic Coke, they reformulated every single product before they got it right. McDonald's, likewise, changed the size and reformulated every product they had. Procter & Gamble, 50% of the disposable diaper market in Japan. Del Monte, Nabisco, Beatrice, Digital Equipment, Schick. Schick has over 70% of the disposable razor market in Japan. Interestingly, on the bad news side of it, Gillette failed miserably in Japan when they went over there. The reason was Gillette didn't take the time to listen and didn't understand that the heart of the matter in Japan, where they have many, many more wholesalers per capita than in the United States, is to develop personalized relationships with Japanese distributors. Gillette got rid of the distributors, decided to go it alone, and failed miserably. Borg Warner, successful in developing transmissions for Nissan Motor Company. Though they learned some lessons about the Japanese are truly fanatics about quality, and fanatic about quality means that the parts of the transmission never seen by the customer must be polished to the same high-gloss finish that the parts that are seen must be polished to. That's what the Japanese believe in. Borg Warner did it, and they got the market in the process. Or IBM. Years ago, Tom Watson Sr. was bitterly criticized for hanging in with his German trading partners too long. In fact, an article in Esquire magazine in about 1940 called Watson the American Fuhrer for doing so. While certainly I would criticize him for that move, I would not at all criticize him for the fact that the long-term strategy of IBM, led personally by Watson's senior and junior, has been world peace through world trade. In mid-1985, the Wall Street Journal ran a large article on a Japanese who worked for a virtually unknown high-technology company called the Topra Corporation, T-O-P-R-E. This Japanese from an unknown company had broken into the American market, and he'd done it in an area of inexpensive terminals, as competitive a marketplace as could exist. And this very lengthy article described the sophisticated process by which he had developed the American market. He didn't make his first sale for 2 years. He worked 7 days a week. His office for his first 18 months was in a corner bedroom. He learned to speak English. Not having any better idea, he developed his customer list by visiting the New York Public Library. And finally, he got his orders, and then his whole key was service, service, service. One of his first major customers commented, he comes and stops by at least once a month, whether there's a problem or not. His comment in assessing his own success, one sentence: relationships are everything. The Wall Street Journal summed it up. Every month, Japanese sales samurai win 1,000 little victories with American customers. That's a Japanese coming into our culture, as strange to him as his is to us. And what were his keys? Hard work, persistence, patience, listening, service. Again and again, whether it's us selling to Japan, us selling to Brazil, or the Japanese selling to us, the message is the same. Patience, listening, tailoring, fixing, servicing, and developing the relationship. There is no magic in doing international business, to put it mildly. Only the same magic that we find in successful business practice onshore with our own fellow citizens.